That was it, I guess. Hello and welcome to the channel, the Second Opinion Dentist 101. That is here presented by, as usual, Bo Gram, DDS, with a ton of years of clinical experience. I will, as usual, present what is my opinion, and it's not necessarily the only one, but it's mine. And I have to say that this is not personal medical or dental advice, only and purely my opinion. After this small musical introduction, I want to tell you that today's subject is formalized education, which we're all used to and which has been going on for many years. There are pros and cons, and I will start out with the positive side of it. Of course, it becomes a lot easier to administrate an education if you have a central building, as a place people can go to where they know that they can get this particular education if they so want. That's a practical solution, and also it provides a common basis, basic education, meaning that, as a basis, there are certain things that we can all hopefully agree that needs to be worked over, and maybe we're not all agreeing, but at least they get the same basis where everybody can sort of work on from. And this, at least for this particular institution, is repeatable. Also, it provides at least an opportunity for debate and for development on the subject. You can meet other people that have hopefully the same interest, or there can be a focused possibility for debate. When you have education and institution, it becomes more visible. I mean, if we imagine the alternative where everybody just has to go out and find a dentist and maybe learn whatever he knows, it would be less easy to find these places actually, and it would be less visible. And also, who's learning what and what is actually going on and what is desirable that people should learn if they want to call themselves, for instance, dentists or engineers or whatever. There are certain things that should be a basis. I'm sure there are other positive sides to this formalized education, but you can comment if you like. These are the ones I have chosen to look upon. And now I will point out a few problems that I at least think there is around having a formalized education. On the downside is the ever lurching centralization. You might call it follow the money. If you have a central institution for education, it becomes interesting for instance, in my case, producers of dental hygiene products, or even worse perhaps in the medical industry, in the medical education, it becomes very interesting for a very rich pharmaceutical business to kind of influence whatever goes on there, and doing so by donating money or financing studies and such. So follow the money is a problem, and centralization, of course. And as a consequence of that, there may be no debate, which I mentioned in the positive side, that you have an opportunity for debate, but it may actually be killed. I remember sitting at a lecture way back in the last part of the 80s when I was studying, and the lecturer said that he was presenting this material, but actually he had a different opinion, but he was not allowed to share that opinion with us. So no questions, no debate. And that, of course, is a problem, because then everything becomes a dogma that you have to follow, and even today we see a lot of this, and even things that are not related to the subject. If you don't have the correct opinion, the correct political conviction, then you are out, possibly, or your career will be stifled. So there are simply downright agendas that you have to follow. or guidelines. And as I've said in another video, I'm not a favor. I'm not a fan of guidelines, and I believe in an environment where you can question until you're blue in the face, actually. And so that can be the downside to this, that you have places where money can go and exercise their influence, and you have, ambitions and egos that will actually try to run the show for individuals that have a certain opinion, and everything else is quenched and you cannot speak out against it, and that is one of the biggest problems. There are a couple of subjects that are controversial in my line of business, and that is of course these amalgamated fillings that people have opinions about. I'm not saying that they're good or bad, actually. I honestly don't know, but I do know that when I was studying, and perhaps the first couple of years, I felt that, of course you have to do this, otherwise I wasn't a dentist almost. And the same with fluoride in toothpaste, that we seem to believe is very important, and nobody actually asks any questions. I'm not saying that it's bad, I actually don't know again. But what I miss is an open debate, and that questions are asked even in these institutions of education and in society in general, that you are allowed to ask questions, and that I cannot accept answers to these questions that are names calling or, not argumentative, but just, without any proof. And you have to have proof. Especially since you add, in some countries, you add fluoride to the water without people being actually asked. And I have talked about that in another video. But I'm open for debate always, and these institutions should also be open for debate. There should never be a man standing in a lecture saying that I cannot express my true opinion about this. Because everything is opinion, actually, unless you can find proof. Certain tactics are implemented to kind of run these educational institutions, and if you ask anybody if they would actually believe that what I say is a good idea, that you have questioning and debate, and nothing is forbidden, I think that most people say that's of course true. But there are certain tactics that can be used, and one of them being ridicule, that you simply banal and a little bit immature, if you ask me, but nobody will deal with you if you don't have the right opinion, because they are afraid of being put in the same box as you are, right? If you're not having the right opinion. So there's a kind of peer pressure going on, I believe. Even if you would say that, well, shouldn't they be adult, mature people that can stand on their own two legs? But more and more I kind of think that not many people can actually do that if they're being pushed. So there are certain career consequences as well, that you will be told more or less directly that if you continue this road, it will end and it will not be going up. Maybe even people have directly been threatened, but most of the time I think, even as in my case, that you are kind of, actually I was paid to leave the job, because they had no reason to get rid of me, unfortunately for them. So they had to pay me to leave, and that is something that is not exclusive for me. Then there's a sense of belonging, that you kind of, actually the good slave can regulate themselves, and you will say that, well, if you want to call yourself a dentist, if you want to be, like everybody else, then and obtain this sense of belonging to this group of professionals, then you do it all by yourself. And of course there's the ego trap, that you want to have the titles, you want to have the articles, you want to be famous in this world of whatever it is you're studying or working with. And again, that is something you do to yourself, more or less. But there's also downright censorship that we see more and more today, that you simply cannot, they try to take away things that are not in accordance with their agenda. And there are examples from the medical world as well, that articles have been removed from, among others, the British Medical Journal. And they had to reinstall the article because actually he had scientific proof, they have to admit. So being peer reviewed is extremely important, but to be subject to peer pressure is of course a bad thing. But this whole idea about peer review is good. This should actually give birth to debate and questioning. So these are my opinions on the subject. The reason I even make this video is because somebody said to me, well, you are a dentist, you know everything about this, and maybe I don't. And if I don't question it, how can I be sure? So, like, subscribe, all the usual things, comment if you want, and I'll see you some other time. Goodbye for now.